Hello and welcome to More to the Story with Molly White. I am so glad you joined me again today, where we talk about what the abortion industry does not want you to know. And before I get started and introduce my awesome co host, Mary Browning, I just want to give a shout out to our show sponsor, Dr. Stephen Hotze with the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. We appreciate his sponsorship. And if you want to stay healthy and want to learn how to stay healthy, then I'd encourage you to contact the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. And if you want to sponsor this show or be a donor to this show, boy, we invite you to do that because our whole goal is to expose the lies of the abortion industry, to tell you what they don't tell you, and to heal the brokenhearted and to save lives of mommies and their babies. And we're doing that, and we're reaching far and wide, and we would love for you to partner with us in order to continue to do that. So I'd like to bring in my awesome co-host, Mary Browning, and she will talk to you about what's going on.
Thank you, Molly. It's so good to be on the show with you today. We do want to mention to our listeners and our viewers that today we will be hearing an abortion story. So if you are listening and you have young children in the area, you may want to listen in a way that they are not able to hear. And also, if you are listening or watching and you feel emotion rising up, that may mean that you're being triggered, and we just see that as an invitation to the next level of healing. And we want you to know you can find health, hope, and healing at 866-721-7881. That is the H3 helpline. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mary. And today we're going to be talking to a couple who had an abortion before they got married, and that very rarely and without God's help and healing does a relationship survive after an abortion experience. So we're very excited. Not only did this couple have an abortion together and been married for 47 years, I believe now, but now God is using that they've gone through recovery, they went through healing, and now God is using them to comfort those with the same comfort they themselves received. They are now taking their healing and working to bring other married couples or people through abortion recovery. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Scott and Linda Johnson. So y'all, Johnson,
No,
Burgess.
it's Burgess.
Yeah, I don't know why I know a woman named Linda Johnson. That's why. Scott and Linda Burgess. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Oh, we appreciate it so much. And it's really so encouraging and it's hopeful. And I hope it's helpful to our listeners that you don't have to be stuck in abortion pain and abortion secrecy or abortion shame. There is hope and healing. Even if you're married and your spouse and you did not share abortion together, but one of you have, we strongly encourage you to go through abortion recovery. And so, Scott and Linda, I would love for you to come in and just share with our audience and our listeners, a little bit of background about your youth and what happened, and then in your marriage.
Yeah. Linda always goes first.
Oh, yeah.
Lady first.
Okay, so growing up, I lived with a typical family. I had a mom and a dad and a sibling, one brother. We moved a lot when I was a kid. My dad worked for a company that just transferred him a lot. So I never really had deep relationships with anybody. I think one time I moved 11 times by the time I was 11, 12. Then after that, it slowed down. But anyway, I went on to, I begged my parents to let me go to college. And so I did. And then my boyfriend at the time, we found ourselves basically in a unplanned pregnancy. And I did grow up knowing that I shouldn't get myself into that situation, but not really knowing how do you prevent that, or what are you supposed to be looking for. My dad, I found out when I was 16, wasn't my biological father, although then he turned around and adopted me at the age of 16. And I don't hold that against him. I think it was something they always had planned to do and just for different reasons never got around to it. But um, but my brother's my half brother. And I think because of that, he became an alcoholic, to be honest, over the years. And he didn't give me the love and attention that I desired. He never attended anything I was involved in school. And so when I found Scott, he gave me all that stuff. But again, we ended up in that unplanned pregnancy. And
Just like your mom.
yes, my mom also had me out of wedlock, but I just couldn't even go to her and tell her I was pregnant. I just didn't want to disappoint either one of them. And so we,
And both of y'all were in college at the time?
yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
was,
And so
That was-
there's other pressures there. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. He was getting ready to graduate from college about that time that we found out. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. I'll let him talk about his now, his side.
yeah, I came from a smaller town where my parents were well known in the community and were active in the community. So that I thought it would bring shame to them, but I was really, having accepted Christ, unsure of what I should do. And so what I failed to do is seek counsel from anybody, much or a clergyman. What I ended up doing was going to my secular college library and trying to determine if this was actually a human being or not. At that time, many years ago, there was a big debate on whether it was a clump of cells or a human being. That's before all the technology we have today, which I think would have impacted me much more so had we known then what we know today. And I didn't take the advice my father always gave me. He always said, when in doubt, don't. But I did. And so that's my biggest regret of ever not following his advice, as I did when I should have don't on that typical issue. So we ended up driving to the big city on the east coast of Missouri one summer, I think it was day in June.
Was
So-
this a mutual decision for both of y'all? You talked about it? Did you talk
Yeah,
about?
we did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it was a mutual decision. Okay.
And
And
Barry will talk about it later. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think both of you are making a good point because neither one of you talked to anyone. Is that right?
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's common, but I think for our listeners and our viewers that they would recognize that that may be them, or they may find themselves in a situation of an unexpected pregnancy and don't want to tell anyone, don't want to talk to anyone. So what would your advice be to someone that's listening or watching today? What would your advice be to them?
Man, I can say the best resource we have right now is pregnancy care centers.
Mhm.
And everybody should be connected with them. I know you're going to talk about this in a minute, the H3 helpline, but that is one thing still people don't know anything about. They don't know about pregnancy care centers. You know, I wish we could put huge billboards up all around our country talking about pregnancy care centers so people know that there's a safe place to go and just receive counsel, you know, to get that free pregnancy test and those free sonograms and really know what's going on.
right. And really talk to someone who will give you all the information you need to know.
Yes, they will.
Both
Many of them have after birth assistance too, even financial assistance. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, if you need help on rent or something. Yeah. So it's, yeah.
And that is a common excuse for a lot of women and men who choose abortion is, oh, my parents, I don't want to tell my parents, I'm in college, what am I going to do? So we're looking at external factors instead of internal instincts,
Mhm.
you know, for those decisions. Okay, so go ahead and so y'all went to have an abortion,
Yeah.
and what was that experience like for the both of you?
Well, I wasn't in there, so
Mm.
but
Well, he
from-
went and
I
he
drove
sat in the
in the
waiting
car.
room. You
No,
were
I
in the
wasn't.
waiting room.
Okay.
And that's about the extent of what I remember. I kind of remember being on the table. And after that, I remember getting in the car and I don't really remember anything else about the abortion itself. But I don't think we just both suppressed it afterwards. Like we were taking this to our deathbed. We were never going to tell anybody. that we'd been pregnant. We were never going to tell anybody we had an abortion. It was a secret we were going to take. And
To your grave.
we
And
took it pretty close,
yeah,
about halfway there.
right. And so, so you graduated from college, I guess, before you, and then got married.
Married, yes.
He did. He graduated. I ended up quitting
yeah.
school, but we got married probably about shortly after our baby would have been born. We got married, and we lived a life of, working and partying and hanging out with our friends, and wasn't.
Then we had children.
Well, then we did have children, and then we kind of calmed down a little bit, and we made sure our kids were in church.
Mm-hmm.
And we both grew up going to church. But I was saying about this before I got on here, like my church was going to church, putting on your good clothes, and really hiding all your burdens. I didn't know church was a building that you went to present yourself, I think. And, the churches really should be a hospital for people to be healed from their sins. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I went to a large church and enjoyed serving there through God and Country that I took through Boy Scouts. And then I think it's important, though, that we had one child, one on the way. We talked about our abortion one night, wrote it on a piece of paper, burned it in the fireplace, and said, we're not going to talk about it anymore. So,
yeah.
So when you talked about it, what does that mean? Did you have, regrets or, sorry this happened, we sorry we did this, and then burned it?
Yeah, at that time we were sorry, we were regretful. I think we knew there was some shame and guilt there, but we were still being stubborn. We still had that pride of not being able to, and didn't even know really at that time where to go, because this was probably 15 years after we got married. We still didn't know where to go. I didn't feel like the church was a place at that time that I could go and share with a pastor. But now the church should be the place. And for me, it ended up being the place that I was able to share my abortion story, or we were able to. So,
but you did go through. What drove you to get healing? How did you know that something was wrong?
Yeah, so the post-abortion stress syndromes took effect, and I'd had them. I think they just gradually increased, but I was very angry. I was angry at Scott. I thought I was angry at my kids too, but after we went through healing, I went back and asked them. They were like, "Oh no, we just remember you being so mad at Dad all the time, like yelling at him, and but you weren't really mad at us." And but I was looking for my knight in shining armor, thinking it was him, waiting for Scott to rescue me. But what I really needed was for Jesus to rescue me. And it was when the chaos got so bad. And we were actually in the midst of changing churches at that time. And I went to a church's website, and they had a healing resource on there. It wasn't their own, but it was another one that they supported. And I felt like, okay, God, your timing's perfect, and I was really ready to lay it all down and walk through that healing process.
Is that a generic healing resource, or was it specific to
abortion?
Specific
to abortion. Called Found and Woven. Specific. I went through an 8-week class, and then asked Scott to come along to the reconciliation weekend that they held with a retreat. And he said, "Sure, I'll go. I'll support you." It wasn't a trick.
It was the Holy Spirit. I was wanted to ask that, you were angry at Scott, and I know anger is one of the post-traumatic stress symptoms. Yes. And I was wondering if in that as well, you had the anger issues and you couldn't figure out why, but did your pregnancies trigger any of your abortion memories?
I don't remember being triggered when I was pregnant, but I might have been so in denial that that I wasn't even willing to think about that. Okay. Right. Scott would answer that more than I could.
Well, I think you're right. The anger became worse instead of better. as the years went on,
Mhm.
and she would be mad at me because I would not respond. Because in my thought, we said we'd never talk about it again, but she was
Mhm.
still waiting for me to talk about it. We go down the highway and there'd be a abortion billboard, and I'd try to get her to look the other direction. Or if we were in church and the pastor started talking about it, my knuckles would get white as I gripped the pew, trying to hold myself in because I just wanted to get up and grab her and run out of church. And so as
So
confronting
that
us, something we didn't want to confront.
yeah, that was a hard thing for you. I can see it and hear in your voice, Scott, that that was something that it was too hard for to go back in there and look at.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being triggered, right, Mary? You want to flee from it
Mm-hmm.
instead of confront it. And
Yeah.
so Linda, you went through the was it called
Found
um,
woven.
Found and
Found
woven.
and Woven? That's such
Mhm.
a beautiful
Abortion healing.
name. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Scott kind of joined you on the end of that,
Mm-hmm.
The
correct?
reconciliation, the weekend,
Yeah.
The
the retreat,
weekend.
Friday, Saturday.
Okay. And so I just want our viewers and listeners to know that Found and Woven is an abortion recovery program, correct?
Yeah.
And then Scott came in to support you during the reconciliation weekend. And
Mhm.
how did the Lord move on you at that time, Scott?
Everything I had buried very deep came to the surface. So I ended up being a blubbering idiot there for a bit, and especially the night when we were praying and confronting what our decision really was. And then actually we both were praying and actually had a vision of our child, and which we shared with each other later, and it was identical as we
Wow.
were describing who we
Yeah.
saw.
Wow.
And, so then after that, that's when we became active in abortion healing ministries, because we had gone 35 years and through all this anger and somebody trying to destroy our marriage. So that's when we became active, was Found and Woven, in volunteering and speaking. And so it was it wasn't long after our healing that our pastor asked us to speak at the church. We had 2,000 members. We had 4 Sunday services.
Wow.
And of course, we said, wait, we have to talk to our family, our children first,
Yeah.
because our children don't know about
They
this.
didn't. But
And we did, and then we received so much grace. We were afraid our daughter-in-law, who had a colorectal cancer at the age of 17, and they had to cut her ovaries, cannot have children.
Uh,
Oh, how will she react when we say we killed our child and she can't have children? But they were just this grace and happy we weren't getting
Yeah.
divorced, because we said, we got something to tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, we thought you were going
Oh,
or that one of us was sick or something.
Yeah,
But
uh-huh.
yeah.
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 So that's
Well,
where I really got to experience what the definition of grace, what grace really is. We received.
amen.
Yeah.
And what a release. It's a release of this secrecy that you've been carrying for so long, and when you're able to release it, let it go, it's like this huge weight being lifted off of you, and then you were received with such grace and compassion by your children.
Mhm.
Most of the times children do react that way. There's some times when children do get mad, but you have to help them go through that process of dissecting it and
Mhm.
dealing with their own issues that might have come up from that. And
Yeah.
so for me, when you have a healed mother, you have a healed family. And it goes for the father as well. If you have healed parents, then your family will come through that healing as well. And they will learn how to deal with deep traumas and deep regrets because they've seen their parents walk through that. And so now I guess my question would be, can you look back and see, of course, it did impact your marriage, but how is God weaving your marriage back together again? How is He moving in your marriage that's just so totally different than before?
Well, most days I've learned to keep my mouth like I've been able to silence myself. And as silly as that sounds, like we left our reconciliation weekend and we had planned to take a trip afterwards, which we did end up taking. And we were driving and we got in the car and I don't know, something was said. And I automatically wanted to just like retaliate whatever we were talking about. And in my head, I thought, Lord, keep me quiet. And he did. And from that moment on, I knew it was him, because we would have just been at this like bickering session. And he did. And I just rode in peace the rest of the way. Not the whole, I mean, I didn't stay totally quiet, but that problem just kind of went away, And so, and I'm not perfect at that every time, but he has changed my life in that. He has taken away, I had suffered from anxiety too. He's taken away so much anxiety out of my soul, I would say, along with the anger. But he's done a really good reconciliation in our marriage. We wouldn't be able to go to before people and talk about what we've been through.
Mhm.
And everybody's like, oh, I never could tell people that. Well, or people won't like me. Well, yeah, you might lose a few friends along the way, but for the most part, the people who really care about you and understand, and they, I'm still here. Nobody's come after me yet. I'm still here, and he's still here. So telling our story is just part of what we feel like God has given us at this point in our lives, to share what he's done in our lives through him, through his work, and through the ministries that we've been through.
And
I
actually,
have a question. No, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, I traveled a lot for work. And first of all, I was on shift work as a police officer when we first got married, so we never actually even slept together. And because when I left the police department, it was so odd. We both had to share a bed. And we were fighting each other because we were used to having a bed by ourselves. So, but then in my profession, I was traveling across the U.S. and Canada, so we weren't even around together a whole lot. Then when I had my prostate cancer and I was home recovering, and I couldn't believe she said, you should think about retiring. Like she actually liked to have me at home. And so 5 years I've been retired, so that's the test right there.
Yeah.
We're together so much now.
Yeah, it's like my parents were married 74 years and they keep getting asked, well, what's the secret to being married so long? And my dad says, well, I was gone a lot.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
I have a question, and this is really for both of you, because I hear the anger. Linda, you were talking about the anger, and Scott, you could tell it was there. But Linda, did you connect that with the fact that you'd had an abortion? And then also for Scott, did you see any sort of effects in your day-to-day life? So, Linda, did you always know that the anger was connected, or?
No, I didn't. In fact, I grew up in a pretty angry household as a child. That's how I saw my parents communicate. So I basically thought it was pretty normal. But then as the anxiety, I think, really started building up in my life, and I was trying to deal with that. I don't know. I wish I could remember exactly what point, but I think it's just over time. You can only take so much. And then, you've got to start figuring it out.
Well, when you saw the mission that the church supported, you were looking for a church, it seems like.
Well, but I was already I already knew I needed something at that point in my life. So when I found that ministry on the church's website, that was kind of confirmation, like, reach out. But let me tell you, when I reached out to them, I was scared to death. Like, I was so scared. I was like, I felt like I drove to the location I was meeting this girl at, and I felt like there was a neon sign over the car said, she's had an abortion. She's had, just the way the enemy wants to work. But
That's the way the enemy wants to work. And what's interesting, I want to plug it in right here. And you probably know this, but our audience may not. But over half of every abortion is done on a woman of Christian values. So evangelicals, mainstream, and then Catholics. And the Catholics have a little bit more of the average of all the Christians there. And then a pastor we had on our program, Pastor Arnold Colbreth, said that 4 out of 10 women in the church have had an abortion, or they're in the church. They're sitting in the pews. And that means so is their boyfriends. So are their children. So are maybe their parents. So Satan he wants to keep us isolated and silent. But when we speak out and share our experience, it draws those who are wounded to us. So I'm sure you have that same okay, but our producer put a question up here for us. I guess we're kind of running out of time. But that I'm sure that's the experience that y'all have had. The more you talk and share, the more people that come to you and trust you and share their experience. And so I guess our producer has a question for you, Scott, is, to talk about the helpline. Y'all, we put up the H3 helpline phone number on every one of our podcasts. And so, Scott, I know you and Linda both are volunteers on this helpline, and I guess we want to share some time about, has there been an increase of men calling, and how do you handle those calls?
Yeah, so the helpline's answered by a live woman who's experienced an abortion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then they gather the information so we can find a local abortion healing for them. And now, thanks to the pandemic, there's a lot of virtual healing. And so if it's a man calling, then they'll ask, would you like to speak to another man who's been through this, had an abortion? And they'll typically say yes. And then I will contact them back. I have the benefit now, when I contact them back, I'll already have a zip code for them. So I can look for local healing before I call them instead of having to send that later. And when I do that, I want to make sure the abortion healing program includes men. A lot of times we'll say we have abortion healing. Well, I want to make sure it's still active. And if it includes men and have an active program for men, then I can give that information when I call the fellow back. And so then I've called them back. And typically when I speak with them, I always know, of course, there's a woman involved. And a lot of times that woman has had the abortion without their consent, or without, went ahead and did it, went with friends and drove wherever they had to go. And typically they're very emotional. And so I can give them that information, but I'll always tell them, remember, if you're still in good talking terms, with the woman, always recommend a book for her choice to heal, and give that to her. She can throw it away. She can do whatever. One day she might open it. One day she might decide to read it. So get that to her. And here for you, here's local healing for you. Maybe a retreat, another man to do counseling. Always give them the Found and Woven website, because they can reach out to Found and Woven, and then we'll send them through healing. And I'm a counselor through Found and Woven on virtually, so we can do that through Zoom. And so there's the pandemic, which we all thought was for bad, ended up being really for good as far as spreading ministries. Found and Woven has had people calling from China and different countries and cities. So they're all around the world, and the U.S. call in, and they're pretty accommodating due to the differences in time, setting up a time to help women and counsel them through now their own curriculum. And so it really became something positive.
That's amazing. Well, Mary, do you have anything to ask before we
Well,
close?
I just have a question, and either one of you, and maybe Linda would have more of the detail, but I just wonder if, as you've been working the H3 helpline, if you see any differences in the calls that you take for women as they face the chemical abortion, as they go through that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, with the chemical abortion, we've sent women to their own restrooms, bathrooms, wherever, to have their own abortion. And I mean, the stories we hear are horrific. We've actually had some calls that have come in while they're miscarrying their baby, literally having the abortion. We've had a few success stories where they've called and we've given the abortion reversal hotline number, which is another resource we need to get out there. And these women have, saved their babies, changed their mind and saved their babies. But yeah, the stories are just horrific for those women who are going through. I mean, I know how traumatizing it was to have an abortion and all the post-abortion stress syndrome that comes along with that. But I just can't even imagine having done it yourself and watched it. And then, we've had women call and say, what do I do with this? It's a baby. What do I do? Like, what do I do with it?
It's my freezer.
Yeah, somebody put it in their freezer. We had a couple of do that, bury it in their backyard. It's caused some concern and research for reaching out to find out, what do they do with it?
Right.
States take the babies and put them, will they cremate them for them? Will they bury them for them? Or, what do they do with them? So just so many things that women aren't told before they have an abortion. They're just told, go, make your life better, everything, go back and be the same. And, instantly these girls are calling, that's to answer your question, they're calling much sooner. It used to be women didn't get healing for like at least 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And now they're like calling immediately because they are seeing the ramifications of what has happened.
Right.
And that's
Well,
a child.
they hold the child, and then the heart stops beating as they're holding it in their
Yeah,
hand.
we had a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very traumatizing. And we've had a lot of testimonies and a lot of doctors and helpline volunteers, telling us about these horrific stories. And
Yeah.
and I just want to, we've got to go. I just want to thank y'all so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing how God is using you, and to give hope to our listeners and our viewers that, hey, your relationship can survive, but you have to work on it. You have to confess it. You have to deal with it. You have to allow God to take y'all through that healing journey. And so
Right.
that's what we want to encourage you. We want to encourage you to reach out to the H3 helpline if you need to get involved in an abortion recovery program, which we encourage everyone to do, right? I mean, don't go through 10, 20, 30 years of suffering when there's hope and help for you, even right now. It doesn't matter how long ago it is.
Yeah, they
And
can just call and talk to somebody. If they just need somebody to talk to, they can call and talk to somebody.
absolutely. And somebody who knows, somebody who's been there
Right.
and done that, and somebody who really cares about you. Well, thank
Yes.
you. Um,
Molly, I just have one thing, and I
okay.
think our producer ran this number, but I want to be sure we speak it out for those listeners. And this is the abortion pill reversal number, 877-558-0333. I believe that's the correct number.
Yes.
So thank you for letting me plug that in there, Molly. And thank you, Linda and Scott. We've so enjoyed having you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for doing that, because we do have a lot of listeners. And thank you for tuning in to More to the Story with Molly White. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. And remember, send this out to your friends, encourage others to watch. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.